You're live, Mr. Norman.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good day. You are listening to the new WCEG Network, and you can find us on your smartphone or your cell phone at WCEG Talk, TALK, RADIO, radio.com. And when you arrive at that site, just click live stream, or you can watch us on your smart TV via YouTube at WCEG Network. That's WCEG Network. I am Norman A. Carter Jr., your show host for Issues and Answers, a great addition, and I'll be with you for the next hour or so. We may go a little bit longer. We are the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. That's what WCEG means, where we speak life into the community. You may like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and on Instagram at WCEG Talk Radio. That's WCEG _talk_ radio, and at WCEG Network. Last but not least, the topics and opinions that you will hear today are those of your show host, moi, and our very, very special guest, and not the opinions of the WCEG Network. We thank you for your continued support. Ladies and gentlemen, our first guest today will be Reverend Gregory Holston. And some of you may know that I am already a part of the Philadelphia's Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Advisory Commission. And the chairman of that commission is Reverend Gregory Holston. And let me give you a little background for those of you, because we're coming to our audience is not just Georgia or Philadelphia. This is a international audience we have. Reverend Holston serves as the senior advisor on advocacy. Wow, my tongue's going. Advocacy and policy for the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. He previously served as the executive director of POWER. That's POWER, and that stood for Philadelphians Organized to Witness, Empower, and Rebuild, where he oversaw the organization's operations, membership, and advocacy for causes including fair and equitable funding of Philadelphia public schools, close to my heart, $15 minimum wage for workers, gun violence prevention, yes, and police accountability. Reverend Holston currently serves as pastor of the United Methodist Church. He holds a Juris Doctorate degree from Georgetown University Law Center, a Master's of Divinity from Lutheran Technical Seminary, a Master's of Education from Cheyney University, and a Bachelor of Arts from Indiana University of Pennsylvania. He and his wife for 34 years have 4 children and 1 grandchild. And Reverend Holston, I welcome you. Pardon me for stammering through that introduction.
No problem at all. And thank you for inviting me to the program.
Yes, sir. I must say that the Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission, which you chair and that I'm a part of, is an extremely important and vital and even groundbreaking commission for a major metropolitan area. Would you give us a little background on that, please?
Well, yes. Maybe it's good to just say many people may be familiar with South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission at the end of apartheid, in which Archbishop Tutu chaired that commission to deal with the grievances of people who had suffered loss at the hands of apartheid, particularly the police security forces. You know, many people know the stories of people who were taken out of their homes at night, children, family members, sons and daughters, and were simply never heard from again. And the apartheid, as apartheid ended, they needed to find a way to bring some closure to those people who lost those loved ones. And so the commission was established first for people to tell the truth, about the stories that happened to their children and their loved ones, and then to find also ways in which admissions of guilt would happen, where people would confess and say, yes, I was involved in the murder of your child, and further to bring some closure in a way in which can move that government to a place of becoming a multiracial place. And so many people, many states, and a few states in the United States, but a few places in the world have used the commission in the same way to redress the grievances that they face in their communities, whether it was Native American people or in Greensboro, North Carolina, grievances against the police for their involvement with the Klan and Nazis involving a rally in 1979, or in other places, a few other places in our country. And after the movement reached met a apex this past summer after the death of George Floyd, and many people were starting to say that we needed a truth process in our nation, that we need to tell the fullness of the stories of what's happening with our police and our prosecution and our criminal justice system, and the gross human rights violations that have been occurring. We have seen so many people shot down on video over the last years. So many people simply reaching for or expecting protection from police and instead receiving violence. And in the midst of all that, we have not really compiled the history of all of that to get the full force of what that means to a community. What does it mean to be a person who is stopped and frisked over and over in your life? What is the pain that is caused when someone has been traumatized and interrogated by police with improper techniques, using billy clubs and having them handcuffed to their chair all night? What does it mean to have, and I'm telling you examples of Philadelphia, what does it mean to have your city bombed and a whole block bombed and 12 people killed who could have been brought out safely and a whole block burning, and you were in a neighboring block? What does it do to your psyche? What does it do to your pain? What does it do to your hurt to have that happen? What does it do to your pain to be that person who is convicted for a crime you did not commit, and you spend 20, 25 years in jail, like many of the exonerees that we've been dealing with in this office? And what does it do to the mother? What does it do to the brother and the sister of that individual? What does it do to the child who was a baby when that individual went to prison and went there unjustly, and you were raised without your father all of your life? That is the kind of pain and hurt that we're going to explore on this Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission here in the city of Philadelphia. And we hope and believe that if we tell the truth about that pain, it will lead to real transformation of the entire criminal justice system in Philadelphia.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That's very thorough. I know through our meetings and that one of your prime points is your 5 principles, the 5
Yes.
principles. Would you care to go through that?
Yes. The 5 principles around a Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission is first, number 1, you must tell the truth. No matter how ugly it is, no matter how painful it is, no matter how hurtful it is, no matter how devastating it is, no matter how embarrassed you may be by it, the truth has to be told. And truth starts with people who are in best position to tell the truth, those who are in the community who have been harmed by the actions of police officers and prosecution over the years. And so we have to start by just being honest with one another and truthful with one another about all of these things that happen, many of the things I just shared with you. Secondly, we must admit we made the mistakes, and that government made the mistakes, and that government takes the responsibility to say, yes, someone in our office did that in our charge to you, and we are sorry that happened to you. You did not deserve that happened to you. and we'll do what we can to address your pain that we caused. It is something healing and powerful when people in and government itself starts to say, we were wrong and we're sorry. Uh, and something healing can happen in our community, and trust can be rebuilt. Uh, Accountability can be rebuilt when people take responsibility for what they have done. And so, whether it's police brutality, well, poor interrogation techniques, or whether it's prosecutors who hid important evidence and ended up convicting you when you were innocent and they knew you were innocent. All of us have to come to grips and be able to admit what we did wrong and confess. Thirdly, confession is not enough. Repair has to be a part of that. We got to repair the damage. If I tell the truth as a little kid, if I tell the truth that I threw the baseball in the window, I told the truth. I confessed to the truth, uh, but it's not enough because your window still broke.
Right.
I got to go and raise some money or do something to repair the window so that you're being made whole. Or otherwise, my admission that I did it is empty. And so many times we look to these empty confessions without the real follow through of saying we want to do something to repair the damage that people have gone through. If it's you that lost your 20 years of life, you deserve something to repair the damage. But also, again, as I said earlier, the mother, the father, the brother, the sister, the cousin, the neighbors, the community, everybody there deserves, because they lost you for 20 years. And they cried out for you. They cried out for that person who has lost those 20 years. I tell the story all the time of just a powerful woman in my church who once one person was exonerated after being there for 27 years. And I'm telling the story from the pulpit. After the service is over, she comes up to me and she cried with tears running out her face. And she's saying, I knew that young man. And we all knew on that block that he was innocent. We all knew. And I've been praying for 27 years that when I come to the altar, praying for that young man, that he would be free one day. That means a whole community has been hurt. A whole community has been harmed. And how do we redress and repair the damage and the pain she felt over those years? Commission's going to try to answer that question in some kind of real way. And finally, also, we got to reimagine a better system in a better way. We got to imagine a system that's not based on merely punishment or merely as adversarial, but can bring wholeness and healing to the entire community, that can restore people to the community. We got to find a better way, a system that's free of this systemic racism that we are facing in our country and have faced for the last 400 years. We got to reimagine a better way in terms of what public safety means. And it should not be about always the butt of a gun, but the open hand of love and joy and opportunity for people. And so we have to look at the resources and how we spend resources. And Philadelphia spent almost $800 million on policing. How much do we spend on rec centers? How much do we spend on after school programs? How much do we spend on nurturing people and supporting people? Those are the kind of questions this commission is going to begin to try to answer. And finally, we come then to some point where we can reconcile. That fifth point. Reconciliation means that we are committing real transformation change, and we're really empowering those who have been harmed and changing the very relationship between people and this government. And that's our goal. Till we build a community where our children are happy and whole and safe, where our homes are well furnished and supported by a loving community, where we are in fellowship with people across racial lines, and then we have a system that we can really be proud of, and that the words equal justice for all can really have its full meaning and be lifted up with the resounding power of those words.
Thank you. I think for our listeners who are not from Philadelphia, we have a prime example in the Philadelphia metropolitan area of what it means to adversely affect an entire community. And I'm going to refer back to something that you spoke of, which was the bombing of a neighborhood when the police tried to extract an organization called MOVE from a residence. And when we say bombing a neighborhood, we're talking about destroying an entire neighborhood. That entire neighborhood was really displaced for several years. And when they were put back into their rebuilt neighborhood, we found that the homes were not built up to even a city code. So those people had to be removed again and reestablished again. So we had a several years process at heaven knows how many millions of dollars
Yeah,
and lives that were totally disrupted.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
that disruption cannot be undone with dollars. Sadly, it can't be.
Cannot be, but acknowledgement of it, and we're hopeful that we'll come up with creative solutions to begin to make people whole and heal. Money is involved in that, but not just money.
Yes,
A recognition or many other ideas that we'll come up with, but the recognition that the whole community was hurt, not just those who had their houses burned and destroyed, and the people who had their lives disrupted, and of course the 12 people who lost their lives. But I hear the stories of people who lived a block away or 2 blocks away, and the trauma they felt. One said, I was literally blown off of my porch by what happened. The vibrations of it literally shook me so that I fell off my porch. And for me personally, I was in school at the time, and I was coming down from finishing one of my finals, and I went down into the lobby, and I looked on television, and I saw this fire and this burning, and I said, "What is this?" And somebody who knew me said, "They done dropped a bomb on your city." And I just, it was a gate. My mouth just dropped, and I sat and I watched for 3 hours. Describe it. What about the trauma of people who are wondering? Was it somebody I know? Was somebody I love was involved in that? Did somebody I love actually get killed? What is the psychic toll? When a terrorist drops a bomb, when a terrorist does something, when a terrorist with 9/11 happened, everybody recognized that was traumatic for the entire country, and they needed to provide services for people who were dealing with the trauma of seeing that building be destroyed. What were the services and the support and the help for the entire Black community to see a community burned that way? That's the kind of things that we want to talk about in the terms of truth, justice, and reconciliation. People wonder why, say people don't trust the police. But if you have this long legacy, or they don't trust the criminal justice system, if you have this long legacy of events that have happened that cause this kind of terror and this kind of trauma, what do you expect people? And what position are you putting people in? It's not surprising that trust would be a problem when these kinds of things happen.
exactly. Reverend Holston, would you give us an idea of the size and composition of your commission?
Oh, okay. The commission itself. Well, first of all, our advisory task force presently has about 24 members. We'll be up to about 30 members on the advisory task force, and they will help to form the commission, which will be made up of 10 to 12 individuals that will sit on commission meetings. There may be some sub-commissions as well, based on how much work we try to get done. But But that's about it, about 10 to 12 members on the commission, and then about 30 members that are on our advisory task force. And we're blessed that at the district attorney's office has a full commitment to this, and has 5 staff people working, completing the work on this process. And we're thankful that we are partnered with the DAs in Boston and San Francisco around this effort to bring truth and justice and reconciliation to those cities as well. And we're believing if our efforts are successful, that we'll be able to build a national movement as well.
Will you have public hearings, sir?
Yes, we will. And we're looking forward to those public hearings where people will be able to share their stories, and we'll give people a platform who normally have not had them.
Well, Reverend Holston, I know you have another meeting to go to. I don't want to hold you over too long to where you're switching right from one to the other. But we really appreciate it. I certainly appreciate being on the commission and having you as the guest on my first program of the year. Would you have any closing remarks for us?
Well, we're excited to have you, Norman, as well. You've already made some great contributions. You've already taught me a lot about Philadelphia policing that I did not know about. And some of the regular things systemically that goes on in the police department that were very troubling, and gets people to see how it's not about one individual or one so-called bad apple. It's about a system that needs to be changed, a culture of impunity, a culture in which no one is held accountable for their actions. And so we're thankful for your position, your knowledge as a retired police officer, to give us that and give us the credibility of being able to talk about that. So we thank you so much.
And we certainly thank you for being on our program today, Reverend Holston. It's been a great time. I know that you have a busy schedule. I know you're going to have a big week next week. Yep. with the major unveiling to the Philadelphia community.
Yes, and, looking forward to it, and want you to have about a 2-minute speaking role on it. So prepare yourself. We need you.
Okay,
about good 2 minutes on just the life of a police officer, African American police officer in this context.
Yeah. I'll be happy to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
All right. Take care. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, our program continues, and this is just the first part of our exciting program today on Issues and Answers, reminding you that you are listening to the WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com. You can click the live stream tab when you arrive at that site, or you can watch us live on your smart TV via YouTube. Just type in WCEG Network. Again, I'm Norman A. Carter Jr., your host on this edition of Issues and Answers. We are the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak life into the community. You may like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and on Instagram at WCEG_talk_radio or at WCEG Network. Keep in mind, the opinions you hear on our program today are those of moi and my guests, and not the opinions of the WCEG Network. Leave my boss alone. And we thank you for your support. Very interesting program today. We just had an interview with Reverend Gregory Holston from the Philadelphia area, and he's a senior he's the chairman of the District Attorney's Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission. And we were happy to have him. And keeping on with relevant things and popping up on our picture, we have Congressman Roger Bruce. Welcome, sir. Mr. Bruce, welcome to our program.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not in Congress, I'm in the State House.
State House, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I meant. I'm sorry.
All right.
Yes. Okay. Pardon my error.
That's
We
okay.
appreciate your being here. I know this is an exciting day for you.
Yeah, today was our first day of the legislative session. And, we didn't know exactly what to expect, given what was going on in Washington. We didn't know if that was going to continue here. The day that it happened in Washington, we did have some people marching down at our Capitol here in Georgia. And we didn't know if it was going to continue today. Fortunately, it did not. But that doesn't mean it won't come up in the future dates.
Yep, that was going to be one of my concerns because I know that there was a problem in Kentucky, and there were some demonstrators here in Atlanta, I think, over the weekend. And
yeah, there were demonstrators here. There were demonstrators in Alabama, I was told, and some other places. And we, several of us got email messages saying that they were going to be marching on our Capitol on the 17th, I believe it was, of this month. And they were asking people across each state to show up and protest, or that's the word that they used, at the state capitals on the 17th.
that's just scary. I mean, you didn't sign up for that, nor
Now,
anyone else.
it's interesting that the 17th is actually a Sunday. We're not going to be down there, but I don't.
Okay.
I don't know what the significance is of telling people to be there on Sunday.
They may have picked that date because I think there was a call for the National Guards to be in place in Washington, D.C. Beginning on the 17th. So that could be why they picked that date, just as a nationwide show of revolutionary force.
Yeah.
It's really a sad state of affairs. For those of you who are not familiar with you, Mr. Bruce, I'd like to give a little background. You were born in Harlem, New York. It plays into one of my questions coming up. You attended St. Emma Military Academy. I have kinsmanship with you. I went to West Point's prep school, which is similar. Graduating after as a battalion executive officer and company commander. You then went on to graduate from Morehouse College, where you majored in political science. He was president of the Political Science Club and reinstituted the Frederick Douglass Tutorial Institute to help struggling high school students and to help prepare them for college. That's what we call reaching back. During concern for former Atlanta Mayor Maynard Jackson, who's an icon in this area, at the law firm of Jackson, Patterson, Parks, and Franklin. He represents the 61st District of Georgia's House of Representatives. His district includes parts of South Fulton County, which includes parts of the new city of South Fulton, North Atlanta, Douglas County, and Cobb County. He was first elected in 2002 and began serving in 2003. And they just keep re-electing this man because he is just so qualified.
Well, thank you.
There's a whole lot that goes on his resume. I'm telling you, his resume is extensive and it's stellar. But we do have a few questions that we'd like to present to you, Congressman, and kind of jumped into it.
You want to put me in Washington.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Atlanta. I've got Washington on my brain.
I know. I decided not to go up there.
Yes. One of my questions is, in light of the attack on our nation's capital by racist insurrectionists, how safe do you feel at your congressional, at your state congressional office? And do you know of additional security measures being enacted at our state capitol? I know at least 2 arrests have been made of Georgia residents who participated in the siege in Washington, D.C. And this group has threatened increased activity, including civil war.
Well, as I told you earlier, today was our first day back to the session. They have blocked off all the streets around the Capitol. When I got there this morning, I was a little concerned because the entryway to the parking lot where we have to park is a gate there, and usually you have to use a key card in order to be able to get through that gate. And but today it was wide open, and anybody could ride up in there. So I was like, at any point, today should not be the day that this thing is open. And but I did see people with armed, military style, National Guard folks, which is not normal. We saw a few of those. Inside the Capitol building itself, there were more Capitol police. So I think there's an attempt to do that, but that deals with the terrorists. But we have 2 things going on, as you know, at the same time. We have the terrorists, and we also have this virus.
Yes.
And I'm more afraid of the virus than I am of the terrorists. The terrorists, you can see them, you can get the heck out the way. This virus, you can't see it. And there was not enough protocol, in my opinion, to deal with that. There were just too many people in too small a space at the Capitol. Now, I had on the face mask, I had on the shield, to cover over the mask.
Yes.
And I was staying away from people, but it was too many people down there. We got sworn in today, that might have been part of the reason, people brought spouses and friends to hold the Bible while we were sworn in. I chose not to take my wife into that environment because I didn't want to put her at risk. Mm-hmm. And so, to answer your question, I was more comfortable about the terrorists than I was about the virus.
I see. And that's strange, but I see that same thing that took place last week in Washington, D.C. I keep referring back to that because a lot of people went around unmasked. And now we have at least one, I believe it's congressperson who's come down with COVID since then.
Oh yeah, we had several people, because they take attendance, do a roll call when you first get down there. And there were quite a few people that weren't there for the first day to get sworn in. And I know that 2 or 3 of them, because of conversation with them, that have the virus, and that's why they weren't there. And my presumption is that was the case with others that weren't there too.
Amazing. Well, some of the things we heard about during the election were the Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. And how will the election of Reverend Warnock and Mr. Ossoff affect the Affordable Care Act as it relates to Georgia?
Well,
do you think
I'm not sure exactly what they will do in Washington, but what I hope they will do is reinstate some of the things that were taken out during this current administration. And I'd like to see things get expanded. In Georgia, we want to see access to healthcare expanded. Right now, there are a lot of people that just don't have medical coverage. And, it's sad. Are you physically in Atlanta yourself?
I'm just outside of Atlanta.
Okay. Because if you ride down to the Capitol and you get off the highway right there, it's people living in tents.
Oh, yes.
Have you seen them out there?
Yes. Yes.
and something tells me that they don't have medical coverage. Living in these tents right there on the highway, right off the highway. You've got people that have this virus and other things that are going on in their lives with limited coverage or no coverage at all. And I'm very concerned about that. So I'm hoping that with the election of these two gentlemen, that all of the things that were removed from the Affordable Care Act are replaced, and that medical coverage is expanded to those that don't currently have it. To me, medical coverage, it should not be based on whether you have money or not. It should be based on the fact that you were born in this country, probably one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and nobody should be without medical care. Period.
One of the things, a little bit about my background, I previously worked for the Inspector General's office in Pennsylvania, where we investigated government benefit fraud. And one of the things I found out, and this plays into what we've just happened in the past few weeks, is that whenever we talk about, or government talks about benefit issuance like medical care or food stamps or Social Security or things of that sort, there's always seems to be a black face that's put on it. And that perception is dangerous because people who are racist and who may at that point be in power are the ones who make the decisions. And what they don't realize is that the greater majority of the people who need these benefits are not people of color.
That is correct. If that was the case, they wouldn't have the benefits there.
Correct. Correct.
I have to tell some of my European colleagues, this is not a issue of black or white. This is an issue of right and wrong. And, nobody should be without food, clothing, housing, or medical services. Those things should be, you should have those as a function of the fact that you were just born, period.
I think this COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic that we're into really exacerbates that problem, because what happens is we're all interacting with one another. So poor, black, white, rich, and we all affect one another. And if you're denying one group of people medical care or access to medical care, it really affects the entire community.
That's correct. We
I
all
think
breathe on each other.
Exactly. And that's really a dangerous case of nearsightedness.
Or no-sightedness.
Yes, or no-sightedness. One of the topics I wanted to cover here ever so briefly would be was legislative racism. And I speak this in the context of Marjorie Taylor Greene. I call her out because she's very much out there with who and what she is. She's a staunch advocate for QAnon, the QAnon movement, and that's really an anti-Semitic, racist unit government that's full of all these kinds of conspiracy theories. My question to you, sir, is that I'm sure she has allies in the state legislatures. How do we deal with that? Do we have enough numbers to combat that malignancy in our government?
One of the problems that I see with all of this is the lack of willingness to say what's really going on. We have a race war going on. People want to call it, other stuff. I don't even think this is about Donald Trump anymore. I mean, Donald Trump is not smart enough, in my opinion, to be able to do all of this. This is other people using Donald Trump as a vehicle because he's allowed them to do it, as a vehicle to be able to espouse all of this racial stuff that they wanted to talk about when Barack Obama was elected. I think it goes all the way back to his election, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And I believe that Barack Obama was elected. He was a good guy, good brother, did a good job. But that was the mistake. I believe that they elected him because they wanted to blame him for all the stuff that George Bush had screwed up. I really believe that.
I've said that before.
Yeah, George Bush screwed up a whole bunch of stuff. And so they wanted Barack Obama to be in there because they were going to blame him for all of it. But he fooled them. He started fixing stuff. He
Yep.
started, taking all that crazy stuff that Bush did and fixing it. And that threw their plan out of whack because now they couldn't blame him because he was fixing things and people saw that he was. And
Yes.
so after he completed his term, to go from Barack Obama, an intelligent individual, and there was never any issues about, his character, none of that stuff. He went through, and then they go from that to Donald Trump. It didn't make any sense. So to me, it was Donald Trump is saying all of the racist, separating things that people were feeling, white folks were feeling, and so that's why he got elected. And then he got in there, and they found out he was dumber than they thought he was, and he was doing things to hurt them too.
Yes.
And then when this infection came about, this virus came about, he didn't know how to react to this. And what was so sad about it is that when Barack Obama was in, they had 3 or 4 of the same, types of things happen, and nobody knew about it because they dealt with it differently. And no one, they didn't shut the country down. They didn't, have the hospitals overflowing. That's because they accepted the reality that there was a problem and they took the actions needed to fix it. He didn't do that. And he still hasn't done that. And, when this thing came about, he denied that it even exists. He said that the Democrats made it up.
Right.
I mean, it was crazy. But, the man has been lying from the beginning. They told him about it. He knew about it. He said, we don't want to talk about it. So to me, the first step in all of this is to admit what reality is. And you can't solve a problem if you never admit that the problem even exists. I hope I'm answering your question.
No, you are. You are doing a very good job. Thank you. I really appreciate that. You're saying things that need to be said. I know I've said it other times, but it sounds better coming from you, sir. Believe me. Uh, relatively speaking, Metro Atlanta is a haven for Black people compared to other regions of Georgia. There's an old saying that once you leave Atlanta, you encounter the real South. The problem with that perspective is that it affects transportation, education, and healthcare. Legislators outside of Metro Atlanta look at this area as a Black enclave rather than a diverse community of both racial, cultural, and economic. And first thing I'd like to ask you about that is, coming from Harlem, I hope you have seen at least an effective public transportation system that makes Metro Atlanta's look prehistoric. Is this a concern of yours, and will this be remedied in the future? Will be the first part.
Well, yeah, New York has a robust public transportation. With the buses, the trains, subways. I mean, you don't have to have a car in New York City. In Manhattan, you don't. In fact, most people choose not to have a car because they don't have anywhere to park it.
Mhm.
And the cost of maintaining a vehicle in New York City is just it's out of reach of a lot of people. But here in Georgia, I was here when MARTA came into existence. I don't know if you were here or not, but the transportation system used to be run by Georgia Power.
Yes.
You know that? And
Yes,
Georgia
I had
Power
family here.
had these ugly green buses
Mhm.
that really didn't go anywhere. And then they created MARTA. And you know what was interesting, that MARTA was intended to go for 9 counties. That was the original plan. But each county had to adopt the resolution to allow for it to come, and only 2 did, Fulton and DeKalb. And what was interesting, you know, because I asked people, why would you not want public transportation? You know, and you had people who really believed, even in the area of Fulton County and other places, that Black folks were going to get on the bus, go into their neighborhood, break in their house, steal their TV, and get back on the bus with a stolen
Right.
TV. And I'm
That's what
like,
I heard.
you know, it was crazy. And then, you know, you had situations like out in Buckhead. You know, MARTA didn't originally go to Buckhead. And you had the mall out there, Lenox Square. And Lenox Square could not, you know, because you didn't have the transportation system, they couldn't find all these low income people to work for those cheap jobs out there. And those little rich kids out there in Buckhead didn't want those jobs. So they ended up building MARTA right to the train, to the mall. I mean, I don't know if you noticed that, but the train
Yes.
station is right there at the mall. So you
Mhm.
get off the bus, get off the train, and you go right into the mall,
Right
and
there.
that's it. And but all of this stuff, you know, it's kind of sad, but you know, a lot of the things that we deal with are, if you do the research and you go back and you look at the history of things, a lot of this stuff is still rooted in people's, you know, prejudices, their hatred for people that are different than they are.
Mhm.
And nobody wants to talk about that. And like I said, when you don't talk about what the real problem is, you can't solve that problem. And it's not everybody. You know, you've got some folks that are fighting as hard as they can, Black and white, you know, to get rid of all of this racial nonsense. But you got some other people are fighting even harder to keep it there. And I'm not sure, you know, that I understand, you know, what's motivating, but it seems that, excuse me, it's just a normal part of human life to find reasons to separate people. You know, you can go to other countries where you don't really have a Black-white issue, and people will separate themselves because of the color of their hair. You know, or you know, they separate themselves from men and women, and it doesn't make sense. But there's something innate in the human psyche, I guess, that says we got to separate people in some way or another, which doesn't make any sense.
Low self-esteem. We only have a few minutes left in our program, but one subject I want to bring up, because education is one of your prime interests, and I'm really echoing a situation I know that happens in actually my home city of Philadelphia. And I just wanted to know, um, years ago, heating systems were lined with asbestos. Has anyone investigated whether or not Metro Atlanta schools have an asbestos problem in their heating duct system? I know it's been addressed in other areas, but I don't know whether it's been addressed here.
You know, I can't speak for all of the schools. I know that the new schools have to meet the standards, you know, to prevent that. And the 3 school systems that I represent, to my knowledge, don't have an issue with that.
Okay,
But that's a question better directed to members of the school board.
okay.
But to my knowledge, that's, you know, an issue that's been addressed.
That would be a good thing. That would be a good thing. Uh, are there any state proposals projected to aid small businesses due to COVID-19 in the COVID-19 crisis?
Well, that's something that I'm pushing. You know, I have a piece of legislation that I will be introducing by the end of the week, that will require the state to look at minority businesses and to try to find ways to increase the amount of money that we spend with minority businesses. Right now, our budget is close to $27-28 billion in state money. And then when you add the federal money that is also spent in Georgia, you're talking twice that much. And less than 1% of that goes to minority businesses. And I'm not isolating minority businesses from small businesses, because you got some, white businesses that would still be considered small businesses too.
Correct.
And most of the economy in the state, in fact, for that matter, most of the economy in the country is small businesses. You got these big companies, but that, you can count them. You can't really count the number of small businesses that we have out here. And so I would like to see some help to go to these small businesses. There's nothing to my knowledge that is already in play from the state. The federal, dollars that came in, we're hoping that they will get that to these small businesses and keep them afloat as a result of this virus.
Okay, thank you, sir. Speaking of the virus, I noticed that I think today is the first day of distribution for people at my age, but I find that it's very difficult. The appointments are all filled up. Are there any planned increase in distribution?
Well, you got two things going on, because this virus it requires 2 shots.
Correct.
And for whatever reason, Donald Trump, chose not to purchase. It ended up going to some other countries. And so what's happening is that people have gotten the first shot and they're holding it so that they can get the second shot. Because if you don't get the second shot, then the first one was a moot point.
Right.
And as I understand it, you get the shot, you wait 5-6 days before that first shot has any impact at all, and it's not a full impact. Then you have to wait, for 25 or 28 days, whatever it is, for the second shot. And then beyond that, you still have to wait another 10 days, what I'm told, for it to become 95% effective. So there's a good significant amount of time. And there was some concern that if they just used it all up, that they may not be able to have enough for the second shot in a timely manner. So we need to get more, is the bottom line. And to me, you just gave me a thought. I don't know if we can pull it off, but you just did give me a thought, is that we somehow get these companies that have the virus, have the vaccine, to compensate them in some kind of a way, because I know they have their license, but somehow where they take what they have and they share it with other companies, so that we can get more of it done. And because this is not the time to isolate it to where 2 or 3 companies make $1 gazillion.
Correct.
But if the government was smart, they would pay those 2 or 3 companies that have it, give them something, and license it to more places to make it. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. And I've heard that there wasn't a lot of foresight put into distribution of the vaccine, just in creating it. So yeah, that's great. So we're just about near the end of our program. Sir, are there any closing remarks you would like to make?
I'd like to thank you for inviting me to be on. And we've got to have you know, a number of people, you know, it's interesting. I got a message, you know, text message from a reporter over in where was he? He spoke Dutch, and not that I knew Dutch, but he was able to speak both languages. But he was over there, and they were talking about the way other countries are viewing the United States in light of what took place up in Washington.
Mhm.
And you know, it's interesting that we were once viewed as the example of how democracy was supposed to work. And other countries that have democratic forms of government were looking at us as the example. And when all of this went down, it was like, okay, well, wait a minute, we shouldn't be looking at them. And the Netherlands, that's what it was. And the country is not in the same standing around the world as it once was. And we've got to do things now to regain the faith of other countries in what we are doing. The Netherlands, yeah. We gotta we gotta, you know, regain all of that respect, because we've lost it.
Thank you. And in fact, you summed up some remarks I was going to make after this program. So thank you very much. State Representative Roger Bruce, who been our esteemed guest on our first program of 2021. I thank you so much, sir, for joining us and providing us with so much information.
Well, thank you very much. And hopefully I can join you again at some point.
Certainly love to have you. Absolutely. We'll keep
All
that
right.
in mind.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you.
care.
And ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your joining us. I understand that in about 2 minutes, we're going to have former President Barack Obama is going to address the nation. So we want to give you time to turn on your TV sets. I'm sure he'll be everywhere. And it's been a great show. I really loved being here with you. We had some stellar guests, and we look forward to you on the next time for Issues and Answers on the WCEG Network. Peace out, everyone.